meeting for January. Happy New Year to all of you. And I officially call this meeting to order. And before going to legislative updates, I have a change in agenda. I usually do. So my changes are under 4A to limit the discussion to 30 minutes. I think that we can manage to get everything else covered and still allow 30 minutes for that discussion, up to 30 minutes. Second change of agenda is to add under 4C, discussion of Poet Laureate 2022. And that covers the changes. So could I have a motion to accept the changes to the agenda?
So moved.
Jeff? Second?
Second.
Beth? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Those differences will be adhered to. So now Andrew and or Jeff and or the mayor, any legislative updates to bring before us?
You know, I don't have any new updates other than to say that we're continuing with the fiber project. It's been mentioned off and on for the last several months. It's still going, but it's more encompassing than what we were originally thinking we wanted to be more holistic with. And I think I mentioned that last meeting as well, but we're still plugging away at it. There have been some, at Arts West in particular, efforts to move the rack for bringing in fiber. Anybody that's been there before knows that all of our IT infrastructure was in the stairwell, and we're trying to put that in a more appropriate place. So that's welcome news for a lot of reasons. But that's the only update that I have, and I'll defer to Jeff and the mayor.
I don't have any.
Oh, none? Mr.
None.
Mayor, nothing?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome to our guests. We will be having several guests from the ad hoc committee to discuss the 501c3 or Arts West. So we welcome you. Next on the agenda, we don't have a Josh. You received the minutes via email. So do you have any questions or comments about the minutes from the December meeting? Not a thing? Crickets out there? Well, if not, let's go ahead. And could I have a motion to accept the minutes of the December meeting?
So moved.
Beth was first.
And I second.
And Chelsea seconds. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same. Motion carried. Minutes will be recorded. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda as such is the Arts West update. I sent you an email from Emily. I hope you all got it. It didn't go out till this afternoon, but it just outlines what activities are coming up at Arts West. Arts West is functioning, so that's yay. And we're moving ahead on getting things more active there. And certainly as vaccinations become a reality, we'll be able to do more there. So thank you to Emily Beveridge for sending that information.
Carol, I'd like to add
Yes.
that those activities were encompassing both Arts West and the community center.
Yes, I know she's partly at the community center. Yeah.
So the for the love of Athens, for instance, is an example of something that's going to travel between both facilities.
Which is an interesting concept. Yes, I saw that that they were going to try that for art exhibitions to be able to travel between Arts West and the community center. The community center, that opening area is just a great area for art display. And that was very much in discussions when we first opened the community center, and it's kind of fun.
Oh dear.
Seems like we lost Carol.
He's frozen.
Yeah.
I'm thinking so. Okay. Well, I guess while we wait for her to come back, I could.
Oh,
She's back.
Go back. We missed everything. You froze for a while there.
Oh, I froze. Well, it is cold in here. Well, I'll start over again because I had no idea what I said before. Welcome to the ad hoc committee members who are with us to discuss this proposal. I did send out the proposal to everyone. I hope you had an opportunity to take a very close look at it and think about how things might work. Chelsea will be sharing explanation with us, and I just first would like to sincerely thank for these folks for stepping up and giving their time to go through these ideas and think about what might work, what might not, and what might be changes we'd want to make. So Chelsea, the floor is yours. The square is yours.
thank you, Carol. So I would also like to give my thanks to all of the ad hoc committee members, Sherry Oliver, Leslie Schaller, and Brandon Thompson, and then Emily Prince for taking the time to meet once a week since November, and for all the time that they spent outside of those meetings to research and write and update and everything. I really have enjoyed working with this group, with a really great group of people who want to see forward momentum within the city. And I also want to thank the mayor and Carol Patterson for acknowledging that we do need to have a conversation to increase the public value that Arts West has created for the past 15 years. So in August, many citizens had reached out when Arts West was temporarily shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic and what it has done to the city's budget. Through those passionate letters and discussions, the idea to talk about a 501c3 for Arts West was brought to the forefront. This ad hoc committee was formed to explore the idea of that 501c3. And there was some deviation because there was some miscommunication on what the ad hoc committee was charged with. So there have been a lot of discussions on having a Friends of, which would only be a financial nonprofit, and that would help Arts West. It would help Arts West navigate those fundraising and grant opportunities. But limiting the nonprofit to financial was not the initial charge to the committee. It only stated the purpose of the group is to get the process started. Members could remain as a 501c3 board members or not, as appropriate to their situation. And this project is meant to establish a 501c3 specific to Arts West. So several discussions were had between the ad hoc committee in those early meetings, and ultimately based on the experiences and the knowledge of the committee, it was decided to propose a management board opportunity. After that decision was made, we focused on putting together a proposal to present to the city and to AMAC. We've heard mixed reviews from people in a myriad of ways. While we know that the proposal has issues, some of which are valid, we know that there are legality concerns and staffing issues, but we as a committee believe that this is an option that should be considered. The arts community in Athens is vibrant, colorful, and active, but to take it to the next step, there needs to be change. The people on this ad hoc committee have been in the trenches of the art scene for years, and everyone involved loves Athens and loves Arts West. They want to see growth, and they're willing to take the time to meet and research and write and discuss this option. This proposal is given because we feel that in order to have this forward momentum, this is a path towards it. This also gives us an opportunity to create a new nonprofit with diversity and inclusion at the forefront of its vision. And then while a financial 501c3 is another path, it was not the route that the group wanted to take. If the basic proposal of forming a management board is acceptable, then we are willing to work with all parties to negotiate and compromise. Start the real work. Get all of the parties involved. We want to be as transparent and open as possible. The artists of Athens have always been an inclusive community, which is why Arts West flourishes, or why Arts West flourished pre-pandemic and is still flourishing still. The proposal presented is an invitation to collaborate, not an attempt to usurp control of our beloved Arts West. Thank you for listening. I will turn it back to Carol for discussion.
All right. I would like to, we are limiting this to 30 minutes, so it would be very helpful if people can keep their comments to 3 minutes, and I'll try to tell you when the 3 minutes is up. And then if everyone that wants to speak has had an opportunity, we can go back and allow people to speak again. Who would like to begin? Nobody? I will start by saying that, yes, what AMAC charged the committee with was to form a 501c3 in the interest of finding additional funding for Arts West, which could be garnered through alcohol sales, grants that we're not currently eligible for, and possibly more dues from friends of. We already have a membership at Arts West, so that may or might not garner any additional people involved in that way. So I was taken a little aback by the management portion, because I can see some conflicts in terms of the way that municipalities are governed. That's a major question. This has not been run by a legal. So Lisa Eliason has not had a look at it, and certainly those things would be important to take care of. Also, when we had a discussion before this committee was formed, it was addressing the 501c3 plus the idea that we could separate the arts from parks and recreation. It wasn't together before AMAC and Arts West. It's possible that but we really didn't have an arts department. So that's what happened when these things began happening. The natural place for it to go was in arts, parks, and recreation. One of the problems with that is a tax problem. We are under an income tax that is divided between Arts West and the community center, which would be a difficult legality to solve if it could be solved. So those are some of the things that I immediately felt were somewhat problematic and felt that maybe we could alter the direction a bit and be a little more modest in our initial goals. Jeff, I know you had comments.
Yes, thanks for putting me on the spot.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I do have trouble with the management portion. The other goals and the idea of fundraising, getting more revenue into Arts West, which is, to me the biggest issue that we have. Arts West as a separate entity on its own without subsidies from the city simply couldn't exist. There's no way in the world that small facility could possibly pay for itself no matter what it did. It's limited in size, limited parking, the location, there's no street parking. Drawing large crowds with deep pockets would be very difficult, and that's why you have to have the city to subsidize. And that's a burden or a job the city's taken on when we took over the building and established Arts West. The problem I have is some of the points on page 6 of the proposal at the top, point number 2 and point number 5, which has to do with to maintain and engage appropriate personnel, including volunteers, contractors, and interns, and then 5, direct oversight of the Arts West program specialists. That falls directly under the prerogative of the Director of Arts, Parks, and Recreation and Human Resources within the city. I can't see how 5013C could take on that role. I don't even know if it, as Carol was mentioning, if it even be legal. So, I mean, that's something we've got to clear up right there. But even if it were legal, I would still be against it. I really think since it's a city property, it's a city obligation, the city should manage it. So that's where I'm coming from. And I think as it stands right now, this proposal was put before council, which I don't think it will be in this form. I don't think it would pass. The mayor would not be able to get authorization to enter into any form of contracts without council approval. And frankly, I just don't see it there right now. So I don't mean to throw cold water on enthusiasm, but I'm just being frank here. That's it in a nutshell.
I'd like to move towards one of our guests, people who have served on the committee, some comments from them, because certainly you know how your thought process reached these points. And like I asked the question in my emailed questions, is who's going to pay the salary for people if they're supervised by a committee? So that's part of the dilemma. So we've got Leslie and Brandon who wants to talk, and Chelsea.
Before they speak up, I just have a question, because this may come up as part of what they have to say too. I feel like, and if you've answered this before in like previous years when we've talked about this, but are there other examples that you've identified somewhere across the country where there is this sort of partnership? And if so, can you direct us to some of those examples to see how they worked? I think that's my first question, and I'll leave other comments for later after we hear from some of the participants.
Brandon.
There were a couple questions. So which one do you guys want to answer first?
Take your pick.
They're all good. I guess what were the questions? And I asked if we could put them in the chat too, because I know there's probably going to be a lot of discussion. But what were the questions? There was one about, is this based on something else? What were the other two? You asked, Carol?
Beth asked if there was
a
municipal model that you used in your discussion.
I may not be the best one for this, but yes, I need to look that up. But yes, yeah, this is done in other places, and a lot of times what we had seen was the city would provide the money for the employee, and then that group would manage it. So it's a contract. So it's not, like what you're saying, Jeff, probably is not legal. Us, but the management board managing an employee. But there are ways where that money, is then given to that person. So I think that's some of the discussion there. But yeah, I don't have the exact models, but this has been done. I can look that up right now. And I'll just stop right there. I know we're gonna have other discussion. I don't know if Leslie or Chelsea want to hop in there.
Leslie?
So just to reel us back a little bit, and I'll try and talk from probably a little bit of my history and a little bit of my biases that Carol can attest to in terms of maybe I have a little bit of AMAC founders syndrome as well from the early days. But I think, the challenge of putting this proposal together as an ad hoc group was to just almost create a straw man proposal so we could start to really grasp, some of the issues in terms of a collaboration between a 501c3 and a municipality. And I think back to, what is best practice or what are some case models that are at play, nationally. I will say a lot of those case models are typically in larger municipalities than, sort of the demographics that we have here in the city of Athens or the county of Athens. So, take that for what you will in terms of best practices. I think, and this is me looking through the lens of a grant writer and someone who is always trying to figure out how collaboration works to leverage additional resources. And I'm not going to say this as a critique of AMAC, of the city, of APR, of all the folks who have invested in trying to create more sustainability in the future longevity of Arts West. But I think even pre-COVID, we know that there are significant limitations within any kind of local municipality's budget to really invest in arts and culture. On the other flip side of that, we are an amazing creative economy here within the city. And I think there's always been a vision, and that's what AMAC has tried to lift in terms of what we want to achieve within this. And I refer to it as the creative economy because, my bias is I work with entrepreneurs, but arts and culture in general. Arts West was conceived as that hub even though, to Jeff's point, it's nestled in a neighborhood. It has limited capacity in terms of it being a venue to really generate enough revenue from its operational activities to create that long-term sustainability. So collaboration has always been key. And I think it's been wax and wane sometimes, and these are capacity issues as well, to secure other grant funding to support programming, or even to support capital improvements, or to support, all the needs that we see. And there's certainly, I'm sure Council Member Reesner and Mayor Patterson can attest that there is a bottomless, pit of need, especially when you're trying to maintain infrastructure as well as maximize that infrastructure for programming. So I think the idea of collaboration and perhaps some sort of relationship between a 501c3 and Arts Parks and Rec, or maybe it's narrowed to Arts West, still has possibilities. Yes, the devil is in the details in terms of staffing, personnel, management, governance. All that stuff would need to be figured out. But I think there are ways that we can adapt best practices from other locations and figure this out. That said, I always like to move probably a little more faster than some, and I'd rather be writing that grant that helps leverage additional funding ASAP. So if there are tiers by which AMAC determines that we could practice, experiment, prototype some type of collaboration, even prior to the formation of a 501c3, I'm all for that. But I think to really have secure funding through the design of additional programming that's subsidized by grant funds, the city cannot always be the applicant. So we need some sort of, maybe it's even a C6. More C6s are getting leveraging funding these days. But I think that, to me, is the merit of trying to move forward and figure this stuff out. Is this the perfect proposal? No. It's a starting point, I feel, for discussion and for us to get on the same page to identify those challenges, to figure out what some of the higher priority solutions are, especially in the sort of short-term 2021, 2022 budget challenges that we're going to continue to face as a city, as a community, as the creative economy in the city of Athens. So that was kind of a long rant. I'll stop. I don't know if it answered all your questions. It probably more demonstrated the direction, I guess, I would like to go in terms of problem solving. I recognize, I've been kind of out of it. I got conscripted in November. I've been kind of back into it. I've had a big gap of my understanding of how Arts West and AMAC have been working. So apologies there. I might not be up to speed, and you guys need to, train me a little bit better as I move forward, perhaps, in this work. But I think, this is the stepping off point. If people feel like this is the direction, it's not meant to be a critique of AMAC, of the Arts Parks and Rec, of the capacity of the city. We all know that we're challenged by capacity. I don't think we need to be too defensive about that, because we need to work on this stuff together to be able to do what we want to accomplish with the vision we have for the arts, or the creative arts and culture, the creative economy in the city.
Okay, let's
I'll stop.
move on. Thank you, Leslie.
Very good.
Someone else have comments at this point?
I'm sorry to ask, maybe everyone else knows this, and this is one of the things that I really like about AMAC, is that I'm learning a little bit more about this stuff, but what is the difference between a C3 and a C6? I mean, I don't know if there's even a short answer for that, but.
I can give you an answer.
Yeah,
would be great.
Or Carol can.
she would be.
Thank you.
Leslie, go for it.
So these are IRS criteria, essentially, in terms of, sort of you as a taxable, non-taxable entity. So a good example of a C6 would be a chamber of commerce. It might be, I don't know, Friends of the Library. Other C6s within the city, county would be the Athens Farmers Market Association. Typically, they are working for the goals of a membership association, where a C3 is an IRS designation for a nonprofit that can have a variety of different sort of missions in terms of education, economic development, healthcare.
Right.
So, that's kind of, I don't know, the cliff notes.
No, okay. I appreciate
Does that
that.
help,
Thank you.
Josh?
Yeah, thanks.
I have a question too.
I think that's really
Oh, go ahead, Beth. Beth?
No, you go ahead, Carol.
Well, I have
Go
a
ahead,
question, so you go first.
Okay. Nobody says mine isn't a question, but I guess it's just sort of a reflection. That's particularly because I'm not familiar with the C6 either, but Leslie, after hearing you say what kinds of organizations would possibly be a C6, and you said sometimes like, I believe I just heard you say like convention and visitors bureaus. And then I'm thinking to our own Convention and Visitors Bureau, which obviously has some sort of relationship with the city in terms of how it is funded, and perhaps with the space that they occupy, I'm not sure. So just sort of a reflection on that and thinking, well, maybe, the other sort of question and intent is ultimately, is this about saving Arts West, preserving Arts West, or is this about really creating a more established focus for what the arts are in Athens? And so what I mean by that is, for example, we have AMAC, and we know we also had the Citizens for the Arts, and then we had the Athens Area Arts. We know how we had those different sort of splinters, and they were all sort of similar but different in terms of, we're still all talking about the arts here. And I wonder if really what we should be thinking about is, should there be like an Athens Arts Council, like Dublin, Ohio, a Dublin Arts Council, where certainly they have a significant stream of income, I'm sure, coming to them based on, just where they are. But I'd be very curious if we think a bit more in that regard, and maybe there's already been discussion about this, then that is a bigger umbrella that pulls everything together. It's not just about a space, but it's about, it's about sort of everything. There's still the issue of funding, position funding. I would think that the city would be able to establish a relationship where, like OU seems to do all the time, with basically saying, oh, Walmart, you can have this land for nothing, next to nothing, right? And different spaces around town that the university technically owns, but leases, I think, to different places. And I wonder if sort of thinking in that mode might be, an approach to consider.
I'm going to back up and kind of add my question to what Beth is talking about, because I just don't remember, and Leslie and Chelsea, I assume, are the only two people that can answer this question. The Arts West Advisory Consortium, when, who, what, I don't remember what the function of that was and at what point in our growth that happened. At that time, I was teaching full-time and directing a full drama program, so I wasn't heavily involved in some of the extra things that were happening. But Leslie, do you remember? Chelsea?
Leslie, can I just say something real quick? So when I became the program specialist, there had been a year gap between Emily Prince and myself.
Right.
And there was nothing spoken to me about that consortium. And so I'm not sure if it dropped prior to Emily leaving or if it dropped in that interim year. And honestly, I had never heard of it until 2 or 3 years down the line, where I was looking in the white book and I was like, what is this? So
right.
I will say that.
And that was what I felt too. And I was there.
I worked in Arts West in that interim time.
Oh.
Yeah, and it didn't, as far as I know, I don't remember it being anything that was going on during that.
So it was in name only.
Leslie looks like she's got something.
Leslie.
I could probably excavate some files on it from as I sit in my cluttered office at the moment. But initially, and again, so much of this was the beauty of springing from Bob Winter's head. And I think it was just an overreach. The consortium in many ways was to help us. It was in the early stages of purchasing the Nazarene Church, developing Arts West as a municipal facility, and making sure that there was community engagement in the process of conceiving Arts West as a hub. So AMAC had the bigger picture, public art, arts and culture within the city of Athens, although the demands of running Arts West, programming Arts West, has always risen to the top, I think, in AMAC's to-do list. So the consortium initially was, okay, let's separate infrastructure from the broader context of what we need from AMAC. And, there just wasn't enough people ready to step up to keep those activities populated, I guess, is sort of how I remember it.
And that makes sense. It's hard.
Even one of the people who was both on the consortium and on AMAC, and
right. I
mean, my role has always been, which was when Mayor Abel first made his outreach to us here, to myself and ACENET, was to secure the grant funding or help secure the grant funding in terms of writing the development proposals to purchase the Nazarene Church and then find additional funding to renovate and provide sort of that initial support for programming and staffing.
And there's still
sure
people that grumble.
And file folders here as well.
There's still people around that grumble about how that was done. So can't please everybody all the time. But anyway, that's helpful to me, because when I was reading some of the material, I'm like, why can't I remember this committee doing anything? And of course, you've got two worries. One side is you appoint a bunch of people to do something and they don't have the time or bandwidth to do it, and so it doesn't get done. Or you can't find the people to even put their name on the list. So that's part of the question as well. Let's try to touch on somebody that has not spoken that might have some very wise words to say.
I don't know if wise is the correct term, but I do have
wise is right on. Go for it.
And I'll keep it really brief, but from what I'm hearing from the discussion is a couple of things. I think the first one is that what I'm hearing is that what's being put is not an ending point. What we're hearing is that this is kind of a starting point for a much larger discussion. And I would caution, along with widening that discussion, to look at it more holistically. And I really am intrigued by the idea of creating the building blocks or infrastructure for a wider arts council that's not necessarily laser focused on Arts West specifically. We have other arts facilities in Athens that don't always communicate their needs, but all have very similar charges. And I think there's a lot of strength in numbers in getting those together. And I think toward the end of when Bob was with us, that he was really working diligently at trying to make that happen. And the pieces were starting to get put into place, and we kind of hit the brakes, and a lot of that kind of fell off without his guidance and vision. And sadly, that's kind of where we are. And I know pretty intimately the challenges with the current funding model. And I think that from my perspective, we have seen where we've missed out on funding opportunities, not just for Arts West, but also, again, widening the net for the Armory and wanting to get things off the ground there. So I think there's a lot of value in what's being proposed, but I don't think that it's necessarily should be focused, specifically to Arts West, but should be a much broader discussion. I would also say that this is, again, to Leslie's point of fast versus slow, that this is something that's going to take some time to untangle to make it work. The Citizens for the Arts, I know the Greater Columbus Arts Council, for example, operates through a portion of the bed tax. Now, currently in Athens, the bed tax is allocated for through our visitor center and that kind of thing. But again, if we want to look more holistically and at the bigger picture, I think putting the building blocks into place and maybe making a list of what are the problems that are trying to be solved right now, because I'm hearing two different things as far as problems that need to be solved. The first one is funding and support specifically for Arts West and working through some of the governance issues. There's a lot of ownership from the community of Arts West and how that looks. And that goes to, the role of AMAC as far as, providing guidance and governance over suggestions for the mayor and for city council. So how do we look at determining what are the touch points that need to be addressed for each entity? Because I hear also there's things that from the APR standpoint, and that's a world that I know really well, there are things that APR will need to look at very intently, especially with funding models. And I know that I can't speak for Terry; she's not here this evening, but I do know that there's been a push for a 501c3 there with APR as a whole. How does that work? Are they competing, or are they collaborating, or is it one and the same? And that's, again, larger questions that can be answered tonight. But I think that if we're talking about this as a starting point for collaboration, and that's a word I've heard a lot of, is untangling what that looks like and making some determinations that way. I think also, if we're applying, if we already have the infrastructure in place too, so is there an entity that exists that could be expanded, that could take on some of this instead of creating something completely new, maybe reimagining an entity or infrastructure that already exists and reapplying it in a more appropriate way, especially if we think about the greater arts in the Athens area. And I don't know the answers to any of these things, but as we've been discussing this evening, those are things that have been coming up that I've kind of taken notes on. And I feel pretty strongly about about Arts West as an entity, as an anchor for the West Side. The West Side, I won't say that it's neglected so much as there isn't a lot of infrastructure over there like that.
Right.
And it's really important that not only the Arts West exists, but that it flourishes. And I think that one of the challenges that we've experienced, at least my tenure with Parks and Rec, was it's gone through seasons where my sense has been that it feels that it's kind of forgotten or left behind. And I think that goes back all the way to, the very founding of the facility. And even before, going back to 1996, when, the promise was made that, we're going to build a community center, we're going to include the arts. And then, in 2000, that kind of got pulled for a variety of reasons. And then, Mayor Abel at the time is making good on a promise to the community by establishing Arts West. So I sense that there's still 25 years later, some of those feelings and some of those expectations related to Arts West as a facility specifically. And I think that if we're using this as a starting point, we can kind of grow it and create a more logical and appropriate future for Arts West and help it to flourish.
Okay.
I feel compelled to at least weigh in on all of this, as well as give a little bit of context that I think is completely being overlooked, because we're kind of at this point framing things around COVID-19 and the shutting down and so on and so forth. Let me first start by commending the ad hoc committee for the work, and I in particular, I really appreciate the racial equity component that you put in there. I think that needs to stay paramount as we move forward with whatever this ends up becoming. If you go back and look at the AMAC minutes from 2018, or I believe it was 18, it could have been even as early as 17, but I think it's 18. That's the first time I had presented the concept of a 501c3, and it was for two reasons. It was for the fact that the Department of Commerce Liquor Control has a liquor permit that is permissible for a municipal facility to be able to sell alcohol, which is one of the things that I thought as a mayor was always lacking in that facility when I looked around at other venues that were able to generate revenue with alcohol sales. But a city cannot hold a liquor permit unto itself and receive money into its coffers because of the whole nature of alcohol, which is a heavily tax-based commodity. There's more to that than what I just said, but I think you guys get the idea. The other was that the city is not eligible to acquire certain grants. There are grants that 501c3, C6s are eligible and a municipality is not. I've always been looking for revenue streams to come into Arts West unto itself to continue to grow it and make it flourish and expand. And then came COVID-19, which took us down the path to where we are right now, just having the same conversation. There was a point 6 months ago where I did make the comment, and I still stand by it, but it's conditional. And that comment was, there are models out there of public-private partnerships to where a municipal building we could develop a partner with a 501c3 or a C6 I was just looking at the definition, and Leslie, it looks more like a C3 than a C6, but whatever, that would work. And it would be such that over time, this is a long vision plan. This isn't like tomorrow and a 501c3 gets established and boom, we're off to the races, and that C6 or C3 takes over and manages operations. And from my understanding, when you have a public-private partnership such as that 501c3 or C6 or C whatever is also not only managing, but it's also within their own structure of budgeting. They themselves are the ones who are employing, paying all the overhead, all the salaries, all the benefits, all those things. The city in turn then becomes the landlord. And to take this one step further, and this is just a good starting point for everyone to kind of come together and understand it's doable, but it's complex. And again, I'm talking 5 years down the road. I'm not talking September of this year. But let me continue on. And I know, Carol, you put a hard stop at 30 minutes, but oh well, I'm long-winded. The other things you have to think about is that to go down the road of a triple P, we would have to also take the Arts West building unto itself off of the tax exempt property tax exempt rolls. And that's another overhead cost that someone's going to have to absorb, because now that building is not being used necessarily as a city municipal building. It is being used and subleased or leased, whatever you want to phrase it, by someone else. The parking lot, whether you knew it or not, at Arts West, we pay property tax on that because it is leased parking up there. So half of that area unto itself is now property taxed. The building itself is not. I know that all of you are aware that with the CARES Act funding and elsewise, when the building was purchased, it was purchased for $350,000 and change. You know, we're investing what'll likely be close to 100 grand just in fiber and the ability to broadcast out of Arts West reliably, which I think is another fundamental key piece to this whole puzzle, as opposed to relying on whether or not the wind's blowing in the right direction and how many leaves are on during the summer, to where all of a sudden we lose our microwave shot off of Roosevelt Hill. So all that said, I am absolutely open to exploring a 501c3 or a C6 or a C whatever, and we take it in baby steps to where it becomes a nonprofit organization that funding can flow to where we can start to build upon and look to a future 5 years down the road as to what can happen. But from a legal standpoint, as a city entity and taxpayer dollars going into paying employees, one of the sticking points, Jeff just raised it early on, is within your proposal, and we just need to look at this and rethink some things, to where having a nonprofit organization managing city employees, yet those employees are being paid by the city itself off of taxpayer dollars. That again said, if in time there is a nonprofit that is sustainable and is flourishing and feels that they can take on the role of total operations for Arts West, and still maintain the open doors to where the public can come in and use this space for meetings. They can come in and use it for whatever. That would be, again, the ideal situation, I think, but it's going to take time.
Other comments? We're about out of time here. We're going to need to move on. Leslie.
I'll be really quick. I've been putting stuff in the chat anyway. So ditto to the mayor. We talked about this too in the analysis for the Armory. I think the challenge here is to do this in sort of a sequential way that one strength leverages us to the next sort of strength and ability. So I guess where I feel like I'm limited in my information perhaps is it would be helpful to have more of a sense of what AMAC's holistic vision is moving forward in 2021. And I don't know, I'm the nerd and process person. I'm going to talk about strategic planning. That's something that, again, there's people in this community, myself included, who could help maybe with a little bit of that, strategic planning light, maybe. And then I don't know if it would be informational at some point for us to do like a little PowerPoint presentation of here's some other models of, some of these examples. Because if it's just quick fundraising, a C6, a Friends of Arts West, that might be a short-term thing that helps lift some funding to build capacity. And I agree with the mayor. It's not like we're going to launch a C6 and we're going to secure within the first year, $500,000 worth of grant funding. So this stuff, well, who knows, maybe, but I doubt it. So it would be really helpful to see that bigger vision from AMAC right now and where Arts West fits within that vision. Because the other thing, because I too listen to a lot of people who want to give me feedback, the other tension sometimes with Arts West is some people see it as an arts hub and some people see it more as a neighborhood community center. Right. It has many faces and there are many interests. How to harness those interests for good, is the other piece that I think would be helpful for AMAC to think about. And then I know I've talked way too much because I always do. So I'm going to be quiet now.
And Leslie's kind of pushed in the direction that we need to go in the next few minutes. And that is, what do we do between now and our next meeting? Clearly we're not ready to leap up and adopt this proposal. It's written and yes, everything's perfect and nor is everything for naught. I think we've got a lot of work to do. I think part of that is for the committee to perhaps meet with the mayor. That's kind of an getting organized thing, if that would work out, for the committee to work with Terry Moore and get where she's coming from, because that's a big question. Not only is there a disconnect between, is it the arts that we're talking about, or is it Arts West? It's two different things. And is it the arts or arts, parks, and recreation? So we've got these sort of definitions that have to be a little more solidified and help us to work towards the same goals. Anyone have a last second 2 cents worth? Not 5 cents worth, just 2. Brandon, go.
This has all been great, and I know we're going to work more. I do want to share, I just have that feeling that we're going to explore something for a very long time. And the whole reason this committee came together was because Arts West was in trouble. And so the longer we move forward, I guess I don't want us to wait for a perfect large scale shift when we could be doing something like the small C6 or something and then expand that, because in the proposal, it is a working board. I know people have been on different boards, that some are just passive is a working board to support that capacity, which I think is very needed over at Arts West, which is a hub for the arts, and I think nailing that definition is very important. Some people say it's a West Side thing or it's for the arts, but really nailing that. But I really want to just share that, because while I don't expect this to be out by summer, I would hate to be in the same conversation next year trying to figure out, and then Arts West is closed because people aren't taking the vaccine or whatever's going on, because we're in a weird time, and Arts West is arts. I mean, that's why we're here. So I just want to share that, not pour gasoline, I move super fast, but just sometimes there's this, we have to go here and here and here. And then we forget that the whole reason is Arts West, and people are like, well, let's create this. And because Beth, I really liked your idea. I think that's perfect, but that might be outside the scope right now of what's going on to save Arts West, because there's only one employee there, and to do the art shows and everything. And we're trying to expand that capacity. And so we need some help there, but that's just something I want to keep in mind, because I've been on different groups examining things and trying to get it. And I always worry about that communication and replication, and then it's 7 months and we're reframing the first question, and I don't think that's us. I just want to say it out loud in case someone else agrees. So
I'm a little concerned. My concept was never that this was just about COVID and the closing of Arts West. That was a part of it, but our discussion started well before that in terms of finding a way to get more funding for Arts West. And we specifically talked about the liquor license and the 501c3 or a friends of, and beefing that up some to increase revenue that's not tied to a specific person sitting in a specific seat with the ticket. So I think we all have some back to the drawing board levels to work with and see if we can come up with more answers to what it is that we're trying to do. And then how do we do it most efficiently? So thank you all for a very civilized discussion with lots of great ideas and things to think about. And certainly AMAC can have these discussions again. I will say that as the committee, the ad hoc committee continues to meet, please do minutes for your meetings and be sure that AMAC gets those. That was part of the disconnect. We didn't know the management plan thoughts until we got this final report. So it's like, whoa. So that's one thing that we have to attend to. Okay, I close the discussion without any specific action at this point. We will continue. Next on the agenda is the updates on special projects. You may or may not have anything to add to these. Oh, Beth, yes. Did I skip something? Oh, yes, Beth Braun. You're up. Yes.
And I actually have an update this time.
Yay.
Thank you. I'll try to be very quick. We have met with the area arts teachers from all 5 of the school districts. They are very excited about this potential of putting a mural there on the side of the building. That's the garage building there in front of the community center. They understand completely about, it may not be there forever and that sort of thing. But that's what also makes them think a bit more. And frankly, this came from a suggestion from Keith Wild, who joined us for our meeting. And I've had other conversations. And that is that the mural actually not necessarily be painted directly on the wall, but rather they're thinking about it has pieces that can be installed on the wall. So I ran some of this by Andrew prior to the meeting just to make sure we could continue that conversation, and he seemed positive from that perspective as well. So they like that idea as well. And so really moving forward, what we've done is, and actually I'll put here in the chat for you, this is kind of neat. For those of you, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this thing. It's called a Padlet. Padlet's kind of big in the education world right now. Yeah. And I'll put the link to it. This Padlet we set up, Ellen Galliano set it up, the Athens high school teacher, art teacher, where the other teachers are all putting sort of ideas up on it. It's like a virtual bulletin board where you can just, share ideas and things. And the point of that is because their biggest question mark in their head really is that they felt that unity, which was the proposed theme for the mural, is way too broad. So they're trying to come up with a way of how will we define unity? And so we're meeting again actually this Friday to sort of hopefully hone in on that, because obviously time is of the essence. If they want to complete this before the end of the academic year with their students, then they've kind of got to get their ball rolling. So they're looking at trying to come up with the concept for unity. I think that they have some pretty interesting ideas. I think they're kind of leaning towards an idea of a mosaic approach to this, because that will allow more individuals to really participate, and doing the work by doing panels. They can do the work in their schools, and then we can get those panels back and install them. So really the question is, what is the ideal material for the panels and how will we fund that? Keith Wild was extraordinary. He prepared a document. He took the measurements and then did the pricing of the various materials that we could use as the substrate. I think they're narrowing in on either using some sort of plywood or an aluminum like panel. So I think, and aluminum can be pretty inexpensive actually. So I think that's where we're headed. The other thing that they're interested in terms of material is if they go with this mosaic concept, is using this product I've never heard of before that's apparently kind of an in thing. It's called Polytab. And Polytab it's a material that's used in, apparently it's used like in the fashion industry. And it's made with some plastics and stuff. Kind of, if you think of like, when you get an envelope that is one of those envelopes that you can't tear it, it's like impossible to tear, like some of those certain kind of FedEx envelopes and things like that. I think the material is kind of like that. So it's really kind of neat just to hear these teachers, sitting there and sort of pitching these ideas and stuff. So really where we're going next is trying to figure out, okay, how will they agree upon what is unity? I'll be attending the meeting because as I told them, it's not like we necessarily have to approve the design per se. I don't want to limit their free speech, but I also, we all need to be in agreement. They completely understood that. So if you look at the Padlet, you'll see some of the ideas people have put up there. I actually put up one that got attributed to Dana Dieterle, but because a friend of mine who teaches art down in Portsmouth, they actually in Portsmouth, Ohio, have created this Unity wall mural. And the link that I put there is to a news article. They did it this fall under COVID, and she worked with the high school woodshop teacher who cut out the wood, and then her students painted it and they got it installed, and it's really beautiful. I think her name is April Deacon. I think April actually did the design, but the students all participated in, putting it together. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. I'm super excited, and I will be reaching out to Andrew with, some questions as we narrow down things in terms of installation and stuff like that. But it sounds like, and Andrew, I know I was supposed to give you notes. These are the notes, but I can type them up if you want.
Typed too would be nice. So
What's that?
typed as well would be nice.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah. So anyhow, it's exciting and they're excited. So I think it's a good thing.
Yay.
This is absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Run with it. Let's do it and figure it out.
They were so thrilled, like especially the teachers like at Alexander and Trimble, really thrilled. And of course, Fed Hawk, we know Ellen Hadley, I think many of you know, just to be included in this. And some of them had already had mural projects like on their agenda for what they were teaching this year, but most of them are doing some sort of hybrid kind of situation. So yeah, I think this is going to be fantastic.
You know, Beth, this is one of those things, if we bring all 5 school districts together on this project and kids working on it, it's one of those that's truly a county community building to where people will more freely come into Athens as opposed to the big bad Athens. They're going to come in because my child's work is on this wall.
Yeah.
This is perfect.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yay.
Yay.
Win, win, win. And sorry I keep skipping you on our agendas every time it's you.
I know. It hurts.
Sorry. Moving on. Next on the agenda is the Poet Laureate 2022. I have spoken with Wendy McVicker, and she would be willing to extend her term through to 2022 because of the COVID and so little has been able to happen. And she was quite excited about that. And so I felt that it was appropriate that if you are ready to move on that, we can vote on it tonight and send it to council and see if they agree. So do I have a motion to—
I so move. Yes.
Okay, so the motion's to extend Wendy McVicker's Poet Laureate term through 2022. And so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion is carried. So we will be sending that to City Council. Okay, now we're down to the special projects, the walking map. Josh, have we moved forward on that at all?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit with Nancy Stevens of the Map Athens project to see what was possible there, because building our own map from scratch, I mean, it's going to take money and time and resources, and we're a little limited there. And we don't want to overlap projects that are already being done that are great and that we can utilize. So she says that she'd be happy to explore creating additional tours for us and with us, including she said one of the ones on her list, she'd like to do a mural tour of the county, and that she'd be glad to, to help us put that together. She gave me a form that we can fill out. We basically need to fill out the list of murals we want, information about each mural, and then we need to find a way to get high quality photographs of that mural. And either I can do that or I can talk with her about getting someone to do that. But we could also brainstorm with her other types of walks that we would want to include in the Map Athens projects, because they still are expanding it quite a bit. I actually looked at it just again a few weeks ago, and they added more. So they've been busy at work. And she says that while they're not going to be able to build something custom for us, that we can always link to the project on the AMAC website, on the city website, on any Arts Hub website that we do develop. So that's one thing. And the other is that the Arts Hub website that Maggie Press developed for us. I reached back out again to the university's community work study program. I had put in an application in early March of last year, and when the pandemic hit, a lot of us had to drop some balls. They never got back to me. I never followed up with them, but they're willing to look at it again this year so we can get a work study intern to complete the work on that website. And that might be another place where we can link to the walking map. So that's kind of two projects in one, both the arts walking map, and then there's like the Arts Hub, the arts database, and artist database that we've been working on and talking about.
Fantastic. Sounds like great progress.
So oh, go ahead, Carol.
I was going to move on.
Okay. So my plan is to move forward with Nancy as well as with the potential intern and see where we can get. But I have no doubt we can get a mural walking map going and then work with our web folks to get it on our website and start promoting it.
My only thought was that I think that we should be sure to include non-public art murals as well as the public art, because we have some great things that are being privately done. They're wonderful. And Betsy, you are not singled out all the time. I skipped Chelsea as well. I think I need new reading glasses. Chelsea, you're on.
Thanks, Carol. So the policies document review. So I touched base with Andrew after our last meeting, and he gave me a lot of great answers to the questions that we had. I have updated the policy within that Google Doc, which I would be happy to forward along to everybody. Yet again, it's the same link as before, but sometimes it's just easier to get a new one. And so everything that I updated is highlighted in a light green. There was a lot of the city admin does this, but then in the original policies, it says that it was an AMAC responsibility. And so I changed the language to really be like AMAC will assist in case we ever do need to step in and help. But for the most part, a lot of the things were city administration responsibilities. There is one kind of call to action that we did find, and that is that we need to conduct a biannual review of the city art collections. And so I am perfectly happy or willing to help out with that whenever we, see fit to do that. Andrew, did you have any suggestions? Did you get a chance to take a look at that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the things, and we were saying, city administration specific items, a lot of that's, the physical installation type of thing, working, once AMAC has gotten a piece of art and, we're in the process of accepting it, the physical installation of that art piece, we wanted to expect, AMAC to, be the installers or to, work on that. We have city staff that can work with the artist directly, but it's a collaborative effort. So it's a lot of, simple cleanup items. But the big one, and I'm glad Chelsea brought it up, is the assessment of the city art. And I don't know that that's ever actually happened, at least not to my knowledge. And maybe somebody else knows of that, but I don't recall that being a thing before.
I know that Josh has done a really good job about keeping track of AMAC specific projects, but I don't know if there's been a review of, it says basically the city art collections. And so do we have a list somewhere that states like the Dan mobile that's, hanging in the city hall, or that's hanging in city hall? Like, do we have a list somewhere that we can refer back to, if somebody asks, I guess?
No, and that's part of the challenge. And the other part of that is with the assessment, what's the condition? And we have a lot of murals that have been installed in the last 4 or 5 years. Same with the traffic wraps. We're going to be coming to the end very soon of some of those initial traffic wraps that went up. And we haven't really done any analysis to find out the current condition. You know, is it in good condition, poor condition? Do we need to look at replacing? You know, I would think that our intent would be to try to get as much life out of these things as possible and as much enjoyment out, but there is a lifespan on those. So at some point, murals are not forever, and we have to think about what the next step looks like.
For art that is forever, paintings, sculptures, statues, that sort of thing, are you looking at the insurance value?
I mean, obviously something that we need to consider, especially if it's city owned. Currently, with our city, we're self-insured. Anything that is under the purview of the city as part of any facility or building, it's kind of just lumped in there. So a good example is that we talk about Hebe all the time. At the water treatment plant, if something were to happen to Hebe at the water treatment plant, it's covered under the water treatment plant's portion of the policy, under items that are located in that building. But I could see, especially with larger pieces, if we were to have a piece that was donated to the city that was particularly expensive, or a large installation, that we'd want to add that to our schedule independent of that.
AMAC, all of you know that, some years ago, I wanted to have sculpture art in Armory Park, and started thinking about having something very similar to what you see in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And it would, anything that's in the public right of way that is the city's responsibility, and I've spoken to Lisa Eliason, the law director, about this, is that it would fall under our insurance for liability if it's something that an artist has loaned to the city. There was an artist out of West Virginia, out of Morgantown, that for the cost of transporting it and setting it up in Armory Park, was going to charge the city $2,000 to have a piece of their art in Armory Park for 2 years, and then they would come back, pick it up, take it back to Morgantown, West Virginia. But it would become a way of showcasing other people's art. I know that was Morgantown. Trust me, I looked as hard as I could to find someone local. There is a guy and I'm blanking on his name, in Albany, who does these really cool sculpture heads and stuff. So anyway, there's a way to do this, and it's really not that cumbersome and onerous.
So that's the update on policy review.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Because I am not on anymore, so I'm just going blind here. That's fine. So I can't see any of you.
Okay.
Key to the city. Kelly, did you follow up on that at all?
Was I supposed to be contacting artists or something, or?
I
We talked about it, but we hadn't really decided on what kind of
well, we want people to think of what ideas they have.
An idea that I had, I didn't know if we were thinking of a piece of art to give to somebody as a key, because I was thinking of artists in the area that have pieces that might be appropriate. And one artist I was thinking of is Henry Levine. I don't know if you people are familiar with him. Thornridge. He's a glass blower. And his work is exquisite. He doesn't really sell around here because he's mostly sells in larger markets, New York City and other places in the country. But he's located in Shade.
Today we'll be going over how to join a meeting. We've got a couple options that we'll go through.
Anyways, his work is beautiful. He was one artist that I thought might be a candidate for something like this. But I'm sorry, I dropped the ball on this. I really didn't.
That's fine. You have quite a bit to tell us, actually.
Okay, good.
We'll just continue on that.
I also have an artist friend who's she's a potter. She's in Shade as well. Susie Abramovitz, Rock Riffle Run Pottery. She's making these wonderful mugs that say "thank you" on them. I don't know if that would be appropriate as a key to the city, but it might be something nice to, I don't understand. I guess, Mayor, if you could give me an idea of what you're interested in, I could find artists that go along with what your interests are.
Kelly, that'd be great. I mean, I showed you all the key that was given to the city. There's 3 of them that were apparently struck back in the mid 1980s. I took it down to the History Center, and right away, Tom O'Grady, it was crazy. So Tom O'Grady pulls out this file box, and in it he starts pulling T-shirts out, and he pulled out coffee mugs. Apparently, David Brennan is involved or was involved in this somehow. The early like Tree City, USA, but it wasn't that, and the Recycling Center, and it wasn't that. It was some group, kind of like Keep America Beautiful or something. Anyway, they came up with that tree with the A design, and then this teacher, either at the high school or whatever, that they struck several of these keys, and it became the key. It's got a crazy,
back when they
fascinating history.
Yeah.
And really, it might be as simple, Kelly, as finding someone who can restrike more of these keys, take the key that I've got, make an imprint, and because I kind of like that key personally. I mean, it's got.
Oh, I think it's great. It's wonderful. I'll search around for metal artists.
Okay.
Yeah, that gives me a better idea of who to look for. I'm not really sure of metal artists in town who are doing that kind of, what I guess is smelting, or I don't know what you were,
It'd be casting. You need a foundry.
I mean, it can't, and I don't know, David Klon was a foundry artist and a professor, and he's passed. The foundries that we used to have here in Athens are no longer. That I know of.
I'm sorry, what about 3D printing it or resin printing or something like that?
Well, that's an idea.
You can also cast or,
Yeah.
and print.
That's so high tech.
Well, we could talk to the newly formed makerspace. They have a 3D printer.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
That might be a great way to bring in what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I'll reach out to them and see what they can come up with, because the resin can be painted and to look as though it's metal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a great idea, Anne. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. I'll reach out to them. I know they have one. I think Ohio University has one too.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be perfect. Colin, I don't know if any of you know Colin Glover. Colin Glover's father was the one who cast the big bronzes up at the Columbus Zoo and the Bobcat sitting in front of Peden Stadium. And Colin helped his father when he cast those back in the day.
Colin
He's still here. He's still, I don't know. Kelly, I don't know. He's still here though.
Yeah, I knew he was still in town, but I didn't know if he continued his father's work or not.
I don't know.
No.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. See, Kelly, you had no idea what a great report. So, Josh, moving on to the Governor's Arts Award, well, just tell us about it, where we are, and then I've got one comment.
Yeah, I sent out a video that was passed on to me by the Ohio Arts Council, and in the email, there are specific timestamps you can look at for things that really might apply to our application, so you don't have to watch the whole hour-long video. I'm going to watch it, the whole thing, sometime in the next week or so, and come back with some specific recommendations. They're not doing it this year. They're taking a year off, so our application isn't due till end of September, I believe. So we've got some time.
And I did watch it already, so I'm one step ahead of you. The other thing was that 2022 will be the 20th anniversary of AMAC.
Oh.
Is that perfect or what? So
that's wonderful.
Okay.
This bodes well.
All right. So C is election of officers. We're going to table the election because in the minutes it said that we would be presenting the slate in January and voting in February. So I felt it was appropriate to stick to that. So the nominees at this point are Chair Chelsea Morahan, and I would just like to comment there that I felt very strongly before my term ends in 2 years. We basically have only had 2 chairs in the history of AMAC. That's Bob Winters and me. And I felt it was appropriate for someone else to step in and be able to have me there to ask questions that would facilitate things. So if there are additional nominations at this point, anybody want to nominate somebody? And I can't see you, so I can't see if you're raising your hand. So just tell me, no, nobody is, if nobody is, or otherwise say something. It's very quiet. So,
Carol,
Nobody seems to be. Yeah.
I need a motion to table the election.
So moved.
A second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. So we will elect our officers at the February meetings. Announcements and other business. I have one announcement that Carol Alt is moving ahead on the mural for, is it Carpenter? Yes. And that Keith Weil is working on a sketch, and they'll be ready to show us something next month. Anyone else have an announcement or other business? The next meeting is February 10th at 5:30. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I thought nobody was going to do it.
We like it here.
Yeah, right. Well, I like seeing your faces, but you've all gone away. So I got up to put the dog out and you all disappeared.
Second.
Okay, the meeting